I started appearing on this channel because I promised to bring you some of the weirder, more interesting, and obscure things on YouTube. If I had a single penny for every person who said,
"Well, you've been bringing us stuff, but it's all pretty well known,"
I would have 0 pennies. You all have been very kind. And honestly, we've been playing in the 200 to 300,000 subscriber range, and in today's world, that's actually fairly obscure for YouTube. If you just go down the street and ask somebody if they've heard of a channel that has 200,000 subscribers, they're probably not gonna know it. So maybe talking about a 200K channel is delivering on my promise, but I can go deeper. How about 17,000 subscribers with videos that get less than 1,000 views per video? And despite all that, is totally awesome. This actually raises a question, which is, if we're talking about successes and obscure channels, are those kind of going against each other? Because if it's an obscure channel, that means it's not getting views. So are they developing an audience? I would argue that yes, there's tremendous value in looking at channels that aren't super duper big. In this case, the channel we're talking about is actually related to a Twitch channel, and the VOD content here is largely archival. The channel used to be a little bit more deliberately active on YouTube, but at this point, the growth is pretty passive from people who are trying to catch up what they missed on Twitch.
Okay, so what? We're gonna talk about a channel that isn't even focused on YouTube, about how it succeeds at YouTube?
Yeah, for one, YouTube has a live segment, so learning really cool live content can be valuable to a Twitch channel. Secondly, just because YouTube isn't the active goal here doesn't mean that there's nothing we can learn. Lastly, I wrote the script. I get to do whatever I want until I'm told to stop. So today, the best channel you're not watching is Smight. To talk about this channel, we're actually going to need to take a step into the world of 90s television. The 90s was a golden era of game shows for kids. If you know someone my age, somebody has raved to you about one of these. One of the lesser known shows from this era was Nick Arcade. Nick Arcade, as the name suggests, was a show about video games, or at least it was half about video games. Honestly, the video games were kind of undercut by like a lot of pop culture trivia, but it was very, very memorable because at the end of the show, the winning team got to be put inside a video game, which was a very big chroma key set, but actually was a video game that they were playing. This last segment took the show over the top, but it probably wouldn't work today. We're just used to better special effects. Nobody's gonna buy that you're in the video game. Anyway, show creator Smight took this idea and created Arcade Pit. Arcade Pit largely follows the formula set forth by Nick Arcade. The primary difference here is everything has been reworked to be about video games. There's still a wide variety of challenges, but they're all about video games now. Drawbridge is about drawing a video game scene and getting your partner to guess it. Peanut Gallery is the same thing, but everybody draws and the Twitch audience decides live on the spot which one was the winner. In Test Your Smight, the show's host challenges one of the contestants to a game of his choosing, and it's deliberately unfair, which is kind of amazing because it has that like sense of a final challenge from a game show where most people just aren't gonna win, so it's super exciting when somebody actually does. The primary difference is the final segment of the show is now a team video game challenge. Because this is across Twitch, it would be very hard to put people in the video game even if that were a thing. Smite's also put together another game show called Speed Bump, which is about speedrunning challenges. Every month they take a new game and compete to see who can get the fastest time in it, and that show's actually, as I understand it, claimed quite a few world records for quite a few people. Okay, so we have some pretty cool Twitch shows. Why are we talking about it here? For one, we here at Little Monster, and myself personally in past videos, have talked a lot about ways to set yourself apart, and I think this provides a really interesting counterbalance. Just because you're trying to set yourself apart from the rest of your competition doesn't mean that you can't look elsewhere for inspiration. A lot of people will spend a lot of time trying to reinvent the wheel just so they can do something so ultra uber unique that the world's never seen anything like it, which is admirable, but it has two problems. The first is that it's really difficult to come up with something that literally no one has thought of before. Point two is that sometimes you remember a thing because that thing was totally rad. No, we don't want to copy something wholesale, but we shouldn't throw away sources of inspiration for the crime of existing, especially something that existed in '92. Smite's Arcade Pit is a really good example of remix culture. Yes, this idea existed before, and large parts of it are being repurposed here. It's also been modified in ways that modernize it and bring it to a new audience, or possibly the same audience, but now that audience is almost 30. A lot of the segments feel familiar, but by tooling them to video games, it has a stronger core. Instead of a studio audience, Twitch chat integration means that people from all over the world can jump on and be a part of this weird thing. Also, something that I think is really interesting is that this is a game show, but it doesn't have prize support, meaning that the people who are participating for the spirit of competition or just to have a fun, silly time. This means that the competitors are much more entertainers than they are people looking to go to space camp, which generally makes the whole affair more fun and interesting. Obviously, we don't want to just steal ideas. Nobody likes a trend chaser. As a general rule, the more recent something is, the more you have to do to set yourself apart from it. Arcade Pit is very much like Nick Arcade, but Nick Arcade is very old. If something happened in the past year, you should expect to set yourself apart more. Another lesson that I think it's really good to take away from this is that we can look to other media forms to see what we might be doing. Like, sure, challenge content exists a lot on the platform, and there are some shows that do some kind of prize support, but we don't really have a lot of game shows. Another reason I wanted to bring up Smite's channel is his other show, Speed Bump. In terms of a video game challenge, this one's a little bit more straightforward, but it also presents another really cool idea. We often talk about having one core value proposition for a channel. The reason being is that if you have multiple value propositions for your channel, you have multiple audiences. If you have multiple audiences, it means that they might only be interested in some of your content. If I release 4 different types of videos on a rotating sequence and somebody only likes one of those videos, that means that as I continue uploading, they're gonna like one video, and then there's going to be 3 that don't appeal to them. By the time I get back around to the video they like, the YouTube algorithm has said,
wow, we've been recommending this person's videos to them and they haven't been watching it. I guess we'll stop recommending them videos from this channel.
Ideally, you should be treating your channel not so much like a television channel, but a Netflix watch page. The more consistent the content you're offering, the better it is usually. As you might imagine, this can be a little bit frustrating and stifling. I mean, sure, you can always create another channel for your other idea, but if you're not sure that you want to commit to something, that's a lot of work to put into starting a new channel just to abandon it if it's not working. Smite's channel is an archive of his stream footage. This means there's videos that don't have anything to do with either game show. There's a Skyrim playthrough happening, for example. If this were my channel and I were trying to build its audience on YouTube, those might live in a different place for me. But Speed Bump is super interesting because even if it's a different show than Arcade Pit, it's 2 game shows about video games. This is an interesting example of how you can do different things but maintain a single core value proposition. If we're trying out an experimental idea, if we can make the value proposition close enough to the first, we can have one audience that likes both things. And so people often ask, like, well, how do I experiment? And ideally, this is how we do it. Start with ideas that are super consistent in value proposition. If they were to work and succeed beyond your wildest dreams, great. Then you can spin it off into its own channel. Ideally, everything would exist as its own channel at the start, but this can be really hard if you're not sure that you want to commit to something. If I want to try out a new kind of format or a new kind of show, but I don't want to upload 3 videos a week and commit to that into perpetuity, this is a good compromise. Those 2 shows are by far the coolest thing about Smite's channel, but I had a couple other thoughts. Smight has actually made really cool content out of all the prep work he does to create Arcade Pit. First off, a lot of challenges are submitted by viewers. Smight often streams himself playing these games and doing these challenges to see if they're the kind of difficulty that makes for an interesting show. One of the segments in Arcade Pit is called AI Arena, which takes a fighting game and has all the players controlled by computers, and the contestants have to bet on who they think is going to win. AI Arena has also been spun out into its own show. Viewers in Twitch chat can basically bet with Monopoly money on who they think is going to win, which again can help decide if these are good candidates for AI Arena's in Arcade Pit. These things are really cool in terms of fitting them into a Twitch schedule, but they're also a really cool example of B content. Content that isn't your main content, but is related to it. Depending on who you were and what kind of content you were making, it's usually good to record what you can because you might want to release it later, maybe on its own bonus channel, maybe as Patreon exclusive content. However you're doing it, I think this is a good case study in why recording those things can be super duper cool. Another thing to note is that Smight was definitely inspired by Nick Arcade, but Smight is also really good at games in his own right. If you're looking to something from the past for inspiration, make sure you can back up that inspiration. Take those ideas, consider them for a new audience, consider what you can do to make them better, consider what you can't do and cut those things out. In the act of imitating something, you're going to create your own thing because you are a different creator. At the same time, do be honest about your inspirations. You don't have to have a shining diamond of originality, but you do have to be honest about where your ideas come come from. You also still have to execute well. Smite's obviously very talented, and he gets some incredibly talented and funny co-hosts and commentators, and he has fantastic artists that put together assets for his show. And if you want to expand on the kind of content that you do, and for some reason you can't just split it off into another channel, try to find things that are very similar to the thing that you're already doing. Your audience will appreciate it. So with that, thank you for watching. Be sure to check out either Smite's YouTube channel or his Twitch channel if you can catch it live. If you like this video, be sure to let us know and subscribe for more videos on audience development every week. See you next time.